Good evening, everyone. I am expecting a guest, so bear with me. I'm also using a new program, so we are going to see how well I can figure out all this new technology. And if I can have my guest,
Hey, on.
Let me see, can you turn up your volume a little bit? I don't know if I can turn up your volume. Okay, can you hear me okay?
That better?
Might be on my end, so give me just 1 second here. Oh, it's definitely going to be on my end. Okay, try that again.
You're just fine.
Okay. Okay. You are freezing here and there, so we'll see how well this works. Hopefully it's not on my end.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but your picture seems to be lagging a little bit at times, but we'll see what we can do. Okay. So, this is interesting for me because now I'm seeing Facebook people and YouTube people commenting all at the same time. Hopefully my tech team over there will be watching to help me with this. So for those of you who don't know, what's that?
I got a download, so.
You did what? Uh-oh. Okay. Well, hopefully it'll hang in there. But for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Constitutional Attorney Katherine Henry. And I've been doing Facebook Live videos for, well, since May, and YouTube Live videos since October. What? Okay, apparently my tech team is taking a minute to correct something on my screen. Are we good? Okay. All right. Wow, I already have an angry face. That can't be good. All right. Well, at any rate, hello, everyone. All right. So, yes, we are struggling to hear audio from our guest, David. Hopefully he can join us again. If he has struggles, though, I think he's going to call. You might have to take that out of your pocket because it's not going to ring. You're going to have to see it if it rings. Anyway, so, okay, there we have David a little bit. So basically, now that we got a bunch of you on board, what I wanted to go live to you about tonight is actually something that kind of talks about a few different topics that we've been covering in videos and conversations and things for quite a while now. Obviously, a lot of you guys know that back in, I want to say it was late March, our governor issued an executive order that she claimed had the authority to set aside certain provisions of the Open Meetings Act, allowing governmental bodies to start having meetings by Zoom. Interestingly enough, just about 12 days ago or so, our governor in the Court of Appeals filed a brief actually talking about how governmental bodies who were following those very orders were acting illegally and outside of the scope of the Open Meetings Act. So kind of kicked off an interesting topic. A lot of you also know that I recently won my election as the Georgetown Township trustee, and I have begun serving in that role for about 10 days or so. And we've now had 2 meetings. One was just last night. The hot topic at both of those meetings was primarily the issue of whether you can have governmental meetings by Zoom. Well, I've already done a video on just that topic alone. Tonight's video kind of brings about a different aspect of it. So basically, the question before us tonight is whether the county, and it would be GOP, or the same would apply to the Democrat Party as well, but whether the county GOP meetings, executive committee meetings, and things like that are, whether the OMA, the Open Meetings Act, applies to them, whether those meetings are allowed to be done by Zoom. So those of you who are in touch with Republican matters are probably well aware that sorry, my tech team threw me off here. You're probably well aware that our state convention this year was done by, quite honestly, I don't know. I think it was done half by Zoom and by phone and by all kinds of other ridiculous things. I actually was supposed to be allowed to participate, and that didn't quite work out. So at any rate, it was kind of one of those things that showed how technical difficulties, or rather just issues with doing it in a technological manner like that and not being in person, created huge problems for a lot of people. I was just one example. And quite frankly, had I had the opportunity to be able to speak face to face with any of them that were running the event, let alone had they not stopped me from getting in touch with my county chair immediately, I would have been able to vote and participate in the state convention this year. So anyway, with that in mind, we are now experiencing a time where we have county conventions that are being had by Zoom, and even the follow-up meetings where the election of the executive committee is being done. And the hotly contentious topic at hand is whether those meetings can be done by Zoom, whether the OMA would apply, whether any other provisions of the Constitution would apply. I have a feeling you guys know by now, if you listen to any of my videos, what my stance on that is going to be, and that it is not constitutional, nor is it actually legal to do those meetings like that. But without any further ado, I'm going to hope, since you look like your video is doing a lot better, I'm going to introduce our guest. My guest is David. He is our Ottawa County GOP chair, and he is the one who has been trying to bring me up to speed on some of the things that are happening in my very own county. And I don't know if I started, I just talked about being inadvertently left out of the state convention, so that necessarily means that I am an elected precinct delegate here in the county. So with that in mind, welcome, David. How is your sound and everything on your side? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me fine?
We can hear you fine now. Yes, that's much better.
Okay, good. Good.
So I don't know, David, if you'd prefer to kind of kick off the specifics here, or if you want me to kind of share how I was brought in.
Yeah, I can start. I can start. So our bylaws state that the third Thursday after the county convention, we're supposed to have an election of the newly elected executive committee. And the election itself is for the chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. And that's usually all we do. Now, in this case, we also have to add a slate committee to that, because the next county convention is January 21. And between now and then, we're not going to have another executive committee. So we need to elect a slate committee as well. So we got 5 elections that are going to be held. And of course, with the orders through the health department coming through, we got a few people that are saying, well, we can't meet. And I looked at those orders, and it's like, well, yeah, we can meet, because there's that one section where it talks about voting and the elected official voting process. And so that would allow us to still meet in person, not have to worry about being fined, not have to worry about any jail time. We shouldn't have to worry about the cops coming and crashing the party, anything like that.
Shouldn't,
at the same
but,
time, shouldn't. Correct. We shouldn't. But you know what happens. At the same time, I understand the fears of some people. I mean, I personally do know some people have gotten COVID. We've had some people within the party that's gotten COVID. So it's like, I understand the fear aspect of it. And emotions are running high right now, with everything getting shut down and all the turmoil with the presidential election, and you're going through the holidays and the COVID stress in and of itself. So part of me wants to do a Zoom component. That's what we've done with our conventions. The problem I'm running into is we've had complaints about how the quality, whether it be the visual or the sound, at our convention. So now, if that was to repeat itself with this election, I'm now going to be held liable of possibly messing up the elections and not only messing them up, but I could be, they could accuse me of trying to fix it themselves because they don't even know what's going on. And I don't want to be accused of that. I like to try to be as open and honest, transparent as possible. And I want to do everything fairly. And so I've been going back and forth. And that's kind of where you've been brought in, because we got some people that are forcing this down the pipe. It's going to, be their way or the highway. And I don't quite appreciate that. And then what makes things even all the more worse is the fact that I have an opponent, the vice chair has an opponent, the secretary is going to have an opponent. So it's like we have to ensure that these elections are definitely fair. And if I didn't have an opponent, if everything was unanimous and it's like bam, 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 it's like I would actually be more okay with the Zoom aspect, even though you could easily argue that's illegal. But I want to make sure everything is done right.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I'll say it's not for lack of trying, but let's see, when was it? It was our August. That was our county convention. Gosh, this year is just blending, one big blob of time. So
Right.
I was one who participated by Zoom because initially the notice went out that it was only going to be by Zoom and then it was going to be both. And anyway, at any rate, by the time it was all said and done and I figured out what the final notice was, it was too close for me to get out over there. But anyway, so I participated by Zoom. And of course, the first, I want to say it was while we were trying to initially get set up and going, nobody was letting us in. And then we got in and then there were some technical issues, I guess. And they said they were going to have to essentially end the Zoom meeting and then start it all over. And I was texting with a few people I knew that were trying to participate and going, can you get back in? Can you get back in? And nobody was able to get back in. And it was just kind of this nightmare. I don't remember exactly how late we began, but it seemed like it was quite a bit late. And then because of all the technical issues and the way that you would separate people out and things of that nature, the meeting ended up being quite long and I actually ran out of battery. So I wasn't prepared for that. I have a pretty good battery, but it was not like the other conventions I've been a part of. So, and then likewise, I mentioned what happened to me at state convention and, typographical error or whatever, happened there. But Ottawa County ended up submitting a list with one less delegate to the state convention than what they were supposed to, because my name was supposed to be on there and it was left off. And the state apparently didn't catch that. And I didn't get notification and I called and got nowhere and called and finally got a hold of somebody at MIGOP, some, early 20s guy who, thought he was awesome because he was working at MIGOP that day and it's quite obnoxious, quite frankly. And it was before I knew how to reach you directly and he would not allow me to reach you. And I said, can you give me something? Because he's not going to be at the office right now. So they purposely did not do that. And by the time I think you saw my email the voting window for me had closed, and I think they'd already started elevating some delegates, some alternates, I should say. So, of course, had we been in person, I could have been like, hey, David, hi. Yeah, so we're having a problem. And it could have been like a 5-minute thing. But of course, you know, technology being what it is. And it just shows that it's not just like an issue of a bad internet signal, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things. Or Kent County GOP last night, they tried to hold their convention, and they, you know, apparently signed up for the 500 member plan or whatever to allow 500 people to participate. Somehow they were still set at 100, didn't know it, tried to have their meeting. Basically, it did not allow the rest of the people in because they were capped at the 100. And so they had to reset it for, I think, 2 nights from now. Just shows more and more. And something that was an issue, you know, that could be an issue with any kind of Zoom meetings. But we had, I want to say it was, a week ago, my very first meeting as trustee. My husband was there, and he was trying to do a YouTube, you know, stream of the meeting so that people could see. And he was trying to find the Zoom link so he could get that going on his phone as well. And the entire meeting, he couldn't find where it was. And the meeting was over, and he said, well, it's nowhere to be found. And I said, well, it's the only place I know that it was listed as a link in the agenda, which is, you know, kind of buried to some degree on the township website. And it got me thinking, it's not like YouTube. Think about it. I have no idea how many, well, we have hundreds of people that are watching right now. I did not give anybody notice I was going on to do a video. And, you know, within a moment's notice, we had, you know, thousands of people that got a notification on their phone that there was a video happening, and hundreds were able to take, you know, that opportunity to join us in this conversation. So if it's an open setting like that, where it's, you know, YouTube or, you know, something of that nature, it's there's a little bit better argument, because at least it's searchable. You know, if I hear last minute there's a Michigan Supreme Court court case being heard, you know, oral argument is going live right now, I can do a quick search and at any computer and in, you know, YouTube for Michigan Supreme Court, and I'll be able to find it. Plus, I think on their website, on the front page of their website, I do believe they have a link also to view it live. So that's a different story, because it's right then and there. You don't have to have some sort of special link. When it's Zoom, you have to have a unique link for that specific meeting. And sometimes you have to have a password, and sometimes the password doesn't work. So, you know, there's just all kinds of issues that can happen. So at any rate, that's just the technological side. But what was really concerning to me is, you know, I spent quite a bit of time putting together all of the statutes and constitutional provisions that I thought would be helpful in demonstrating to the county executive committee why it was illegal and unconstitutional for them to try to force the issue of having this Zoom meeting, because a few active members were trying to force the issue. And like you said, claiming it was illegal. In that, I addressed quite a few things. But in response, our county clerk, who I just saw at the meeting last night, didn't seem to have anything to say about anything to me. But he sent this very interesting email today to the executive committee, claiming that the Open Meetings Act would not apply in this situation because the Ottawa County GOP and the other GOP county committees are private organizations not governed by the Open Meetings Act, and didn't mention the Constitution at all. And then mentioned that people are afraid of COVID, and people are afraid of, breaking the law by attending the meeting. So out of respect for each other, we should just go ahead and we don't want to disenfranchise people. So we have to go ahead and do a Zoom meeting. Well, that was obviously concerning to me enough that I spent the entire day pulling together even more statutes to make it abundantly clear what I thought I made clear already in the first letter. So that's kind of what, we're going to be sharing with people today. So, just to let some of you know, first of all, I didn't have the exact link available at the time that we went live here, but is it on the website now? Mr. Tech Team? Is it on the website now? The link?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay.
Email.
Can you, like,
Put links.
yeah, at the very least comment on there so people can see it?
YouTube or Facebook?
I'm on
Or
both. I'm on both, so, okay.
I don't know if I can log into that.
Don't.
Post it there.
Don't, yeah. Yeah, that'll mess it up. Okay, so he's gonna post, Mr. Tech Team, I don't know how it's gonna come across, but Mike Henry. He's going to post the link of, sorry, I just saw somebody commenting and it was a very good comment. Correct, Christy. I would agree that the problem with using YouTube for an open meeting per state law is that the Open Meetings Act says there has to be ability to communicate in both directions. Correct. Which is why I'm saying the whole thing would be illegal. And definitely unconstitutional. So, oh, you posted it as me. That looks weird. Okay, so I apparently just posted the direct links to the letter that I wrote, as well as essentially the cover letter. So if you guys want to follow along, I have all of it written in there. Essentially, what it boils down to is I didn't know, much like I didn't know that I would have to be fighting one day for the fact that we have, the right to breathe fresh air as human beings and made in God's image. I didn't know that would have to be a thing. Same thing, I didn't know that I'd have to fight about whether the elected office of precinct delegate, and therefore the entire committee comprised of those delegates duly elected, would in fact be considered, some sort of governmental body. I thought that'd be pretty obvious. So it is kind of an interesting thing, because in general, yeah, we think of the organizations, our political organizations, as private entities. And you said, David, when you were mentioning that the other day, were you talking about the county or the state party as being the, I think you said it was a nonprofit something.
Yeah, I believe both the state and the county would be considered a nonprofit organization, because we're not, yes, we're raising money so we can spend it on campaigns and stuff, but we're not, the money we're raising, we don't plan on pocketing it to shareholders or anything like that. So it's
correct. So the interesting thing, though, is that the county, well, the state GOP, the county GOP, certainly all of it is set up in such a unique way that I'm saying because you're the chair of the county party here, but you're positioned to actually take over and fulfill essential governmental functions. So, for example, for those of you who maybe once or twice have been to a state convention physically, that's a much more interesting experience. You can pick up a lot better of what's going on. But the last time I was at a physical convention, I want to say we were, I think that's when we were trying to, gosh, I can't even think of who ended up being our Secretary of State nominee. Oh, no.
Mary True Lane.
Was it? Okay, I didn't remember if she made it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we were picking the Secretary of State. We were picking, wow, everything's all blending together. That would be the same race as the,
Tom Leonard as Attorney General.
Yes. And the State Board of Education. And we have state Supreme Court justices that are picked at various conventions. And the board of like Wayne State University board, I think it's Board of Regents, University of Michigan, Michigan State University, all the, the trustees, Board of Regents, all those, whatever different names that they have for those educational institutions. Oh gosh, there's other ones too. Can you think of any of the other positions that we typically would have at state conventions?
So for the 2018 state convention you just referred to, the only thing you were missing is lieutenant governor.
Okay. Yes. And we had, I can't even remember who was running for lieutenant governor with.
It was Lisa Lyons Pontumas, and she was unopposed.
Oh, okay. Well, I should remember her because she was the one that was the outgoing state rep of the district that I ran in 2015, 2016. But yeah, so the point being, if you think about it, the parties are the ones that then elect all of the candidates for those races. Now, obviously you have your state rep races or, your county commissioner races or like me, the township trustee. Okay, that's done in a primary race and it's done directly by the voters, and then you move on to the general election. But in a lot of those other huge statewide or even federal races, they are done by the by the party as a whole. So if you don't have, it's quite frankly, I think the fact that we have our party positioning between us and those people, such as Secretary of State, I think that creates a problem. I think that definitely separates us from the true Republican form of government that our United States Constitution guarantees us in Article 4, Section 4 of our U.S. Constitution. But, the more removed you get from being able to make that vote yourself and choose those people yourself, the less of a republic that it is. So if you then, as a member of the public, or even as a Republican precinct delegate, are precluded from participating in any of the functions or elections or meetings of the county committee, well, obviously, how are you then going to do anything at the, congressional level in our, second congressional district, for example? Then how are you going to be able to participate in the, state conventions or any of the goings on there? And so that's one side of it, right? I mean, so the parties are essentially the gateway to being able to choose your representatives of many different kinds. So, the parties really have to be, truly open and transparent, but it demonstrates how the party, although itself might be a nonprofit organization, it's being utilized as an arm of the state. It's doing an essential governmental function. In fact, if you look at all the state laws that talk about political party, our state laws are riddled with different things. For example, our election laws are different if you are part of a major political party or not. They're two different scenarios. So, for example, if I wanted to run for state rep as a Republican, that's one set of rules that would apply. If I wanted to run for state rep as a Constitution Party candidate, that's a different set of rules. Now, some of them would be the same, but there are huge differences between the two. So it's just an interesting setup. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about or think about, but it's important to realize it's not just the nature of the organization itself, such as the Michigan Republican Party or the Ottawa County, Republican Party, that it being a nonprofit organization, that somehow means, the Open Meetings Act doesn't apply. Because look at it this way too. If you have a truly nonprofit organization, if you have, say, the Salvation Army or Catholic Charities or Big Brothers Big Sisters or Mel Trotter, for those of us that are on the west side of Michigan, I don't know how far they expand, but all those organizations are a nonprofit organization, they're, essentially a private organization. If you walked in on election day and saw that you were all of a sudden voting for their board members or, their membership in general, that you'd be like, wait, what's going on here? That doesn't belong here. It's not a government function. Why would I be voting on a government ballot on election day for anything to do with any of those private organizations? But if you are a Republican, you're going to go in on primary day and you're going to expect to vote for, the primary races for state rep and state house and all those races. But in addition to that, you're going to walk in expecting to be able to vote for precinct delegates. And same thing holds true, like I said, for the Democrat Party as well. So it's interesting because for someone to say that, especially a county clerk, that it's just, the OMA doesn't apply. It's just it's a private entity. How do you get there? How do you say, well, the candidates, every single member to be, able to be in the, the body that in that manner, right? You have to be an elected official, you're a member at large, or you're, a precinct delegate and you move that way. You are an elected position. So elected on a official state ballot that's, regulated by the Secretary of State and the whole body of Michigan election laws. In fact, a precinct delegate, when they fill out their affidavit of identity, they have to swear an oath, under oath that they are a U.S. citizen and that they meet all of the statutory and constitutional requirements of that office. Why would you have to do that if it was a public office, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it was a private office.
Right. Well, and I haven't read everything that he had responded to, so I'm not 100% sure where he's coming from. But my perspective, and this is all I'm learning over the last few days, my perspective is, well, even if the precinct delegates are not considered to be a public official, you still have the county commissioners, you still have the state reps, the state senator, the countywide electeds like the sheriff, prosecutor, the clerk. So 50% would then be public officials. And so even if it's just 10%, if you got public officials on your committee, that to me would automatically put you in that act, because everyone should be allowed to be able to hear what you're going to say. I mean, we have a section in our agenda where it says, elected officials report. And so that's where your countywide people, and for those who have never been to a Republican Party, if you want to know what's kind of going on in the county and maybe even a little information regarding the state and 2nd Congressional District, is to go to the Republican Party, because there's public officials there giving reports as to what they've been up to, what they're getting involved in. And even if you wipe all of that away, in terms of no public officials on the committee, no elected officials reports and stuff like that, why on earth would we not qualify for an open public meeting if we have public comment at the end of our agenda? That is where anybody that's not on the executive committee is allowed to speak, and I give them 2 minutes. Sometimes, well, actually, a lot of people go beyond that, but the agenda itself usually says 2 minutes. You could have 100 people walk in and give their 2 cents on whatever during that time frame. That's public comment. So I'm not trying to argue against the clerk per se, because I don't know exactly what he said, and I'm still learning the laws myself. But there are some things that I do know regarding the setup that just makes me go, okay, I'm not there. And with that, if an elected official was to prohibit a open meeting, that puts them liable for a $2,000 fine and possibly up to 1 year in jail. And so as the chair, I'm looking at that and I'm like, I don't want to put my elected officials in that position. I mean, they already want to hang me for some other stuff. Why add it to the list? So it's just one big mess that I hope that some of them will be willing to come to the table and let's just go, hey, we need to talk. Not saying that there's going to be a backroom door regarding the elections, but there does need to be a group of people willing to sit down and say, we need to come to a mutual agreement as to what is best for these elections that will serve the greater good of the party. Because right now, just to bring some history, 2014, there was a massive controversy on delegates being switched at the August convention. So you're not the only person that's experienced some issues regarding the August convention. And it led to a firing of the current or then current executive director, Faith Skekedy. And massive controversy. A lot of volunteers just walked away from that party. We're like a month and a half, 2 months out from an election. And if you remember 2014, Republicans did win most of the elections, but they just barely squeaked by. And so I'm afraid that if things keep pushing the way they are, we're going to have a repeat. And of course, you know the old adage, we're doomed to repeat history. And it's unfortunate we're doing it in a 6-year time span.
Well, you know, what's interesting is, I don't know, you probably were not aware, but I'm just seeing here that, wow, this guy's a class act. So Keith Den Hollander, as a member of the executive committee, first wrote back and literally wrote LOL, because that's an appropriate response to the Constitution. Mind you, I literally signed this thing. The email is, the link of it is in the comments here in this thread. It's also available on my website, restorefreedomkh.com. But I kind of go through the summary. You know, the email is summarizing what the law says. It's not going into all the nitty-gritty of things, because of course that's what the body of the letter is doing. But to kind of give people that anyway, idea of what's being talked about. So, and I conclude the letter by saying that I myself am a duly elected Ottawa County precinct delegate and someone who's sworn to uphold the Constitution on many occasions. And with this perspective, I urge you to take these constitutional duties seriously. And that's what I'm saying to the Ottawa County Executive Committee with the games, quite frankly, that I saw that were emailed by the secretary who went around you and created this Zoom link to email to everyone and said, hey, by the way, even though we already had our notice of the meeting sent out last week, now it's going to be by Zoom. And so at any rate, I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but Keith Den Hollander, am I saying that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
So he sent me the first one at 9:21 as a response that just said LOL. And then 40 minutes later, while we were doing this presentation here, he says that, you know, we have all read your legal memorandum, and quite frankly, they're not impressed. And I'm misapprehending the nature of the organization. He says, I'm not even a member. So that's quite interesting, because I'm an elected precinct delegate in this very county, but somehow I'm not a member of the Ottawa GOP. Okay, that's very interesting. And if we're talking about disenfranchising voters, I'm not sure how that doesn't disenfranchise me, because or all of the people that voted me into the position of precinct delegate. Pretty sure it would disenfranchise all of them too. Where did their voices go if all of a sudden I'm elected as Republican precinct delegate and the county party, the county Republican Party, is telling me, you're not a member. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Of course, he's claiming that he's speaking on behalf of everyone. So he's, you know, of course, calling my statements and my constitutional explanations and legal explanations a waste of time, and that nor the Ottawa GOP is not a public body, nor are its members publicly elected. Okay, so in general, you can be a member, like I can go and be a member of Kent GOP. I don't live there. I've never lived in Kent County. I can pay a membership as I have in the past, and I could be a member of Kent GOP. I don't then get to vote on matters where the precinct delegates are involved. I don't get to vote on matters where you have the elected representatives participating by, as an at-large delegate because of state law. Quite frankly, and I'm not necessarily talking about every single meeting of the GOP, because, arguably there's things that have nothing to do with matters that are covered by state statute that, wouldn't be covered then under the Open Meetings Act. But when you're holding a meeting that's a county convention or the subsequent election of officers for the executive committee, that is literally discussed in state law. And this guy is telling me the law does not apply because it's just a private organization and I'm just a dummy and I don't know what I'm talking about. Literally, he apparently does not know how to read, because I cited all of the law, not even all the laws, because there's an insane amount of laws, but I cited enough of the laws to get him to realize that this election, this meeting where you're going to have the election of officers, is not only talked about in the Ottawa County bylaws, it's not only talked about in the Michigan Republican Party bylaws, it is literally talked about in several provisions of the Michigan state laws, in the Michigan election law. So how he thinks that it's just some, has nothing to do with state laws. At any rate, he talks about, oh, wow, this is priceless too. This guy really has no clue. Do you know any other public bodies that are governed by state or by bylaws? Yeah, actually, I've served on different governmental entities, public bodies before, where we had our own bylaws. And sometimes boards, like my current board, they tend to put them in format of policies, written policies. You have, I don't think it's actually called bylaws. I think it's another name, but essentially there's the legislature has their own version of bylaws that they enact, and they can change, at every session. But it manages essentially how they function as, an organization that's working within the framework of what's required by the law. So it's very sad to me that somebody could have this much ignorance and at the same time, this much contempt and disregard and disrespect for others. I mean, this guy is off his rocker, does not know anything at all about the Constitution or the law, and I love the part too where he says, the MDHH order is very much binding law. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So an MDHHS order that tells us, at least the main provision that tells us that we're really not supposed to gather, that part is totally it's totally fine. It doesn't matter that the state and U.S. constitutions repeatedly tell us things like we have the right to peacefully assemble. We have the right to petition our government for a redress of grievances. We have the right to instruct our representatives, as it says in our state constitution, or Article 1, Section 23 of our state constitution and the 9th Amendment of our U.S. Constitution that tell us, hey, we have all these unenumerated rights that we don't have to list out because we don't get our rights from the government. The government gets their authority from us. Yet he says in here that the MDHHS order that blatantly violates those provisions is very much binding law. Someone needs to tell this guy about Marbury versus Madison and the whole, Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution. because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And anytime the government does anything at any level that contradicts that Constitution, it's null and void. It's as though it never even existed. It doesn't create any office. It doesn't create any obligations. It doesn't create any penalties. We have a lot of cases that explain this. And what people don't understand is we don't have to wait for a court to tell us that the government did something wrong. In fact, here, they already did. Here, our Supreme Court in Michigan already told us that when the governor, the highest level of the executive branch in Michigan, is writing orders on her own to modify laws or to try to take away our rights or to regulate the people, that's a legislative function. And she's then violating Article 3, Section 2 of our state constitution that calls for a separation of powers. And so somehow, and by the way, the MDHHS director, Robert Gordon, was a named defendant in that lawsuit. And yet, somehow we're supposed to believe that he then has the legal authority under some other law to go and make more orders that do literally the same things that she was trying to do to us under the executive orders. But somehow these are okay because somebody who is her subordinate somehow has more power to exercise legislative authority than she does on her own. I'm a little dumbfounded at that, quite frankly.
Well, don't feel too bad. I actually know Keith a long time ago from Bible Study Fellowship, and not too well. I remember he was in probably my first year group or something like that. I remember like, hey, this is a guy, nice guy, and got involved with politics a little bit, and seen him around a little bit. So when he came back, I saw his name as a precinct delegate, saw his application to, for an interest on being an executive committee. I thought he was going to be a great guy, and honestly, maybe he would be in some capacity, but he's ever since the last couple weeks, he's been my #1 critic. And it's like, we haven't even sat down and talked about all the issues. And, no matter what I say or do, he's just shooting me down. And it really comes down to the fact there is I have evidence that there are people gathering together, bribing me, trying to get me to step down. They're fixing the election in a different area of our government, the 2nd Congressional District. It's that I would get if I was elected there. And then, or I'm sorry, if I was to walk away from this. And he's part of that group where there's just that group of people trying to retake the party. They're not happy with the fact that I don't just follow the Kool-Aid, or I'm sorry, I don't drink the Kool-Aid. I just don't do what the elected officials want me to do just because that's how you roll. For me, it's like, is it right? Is it ethical? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? And that's kind of what this election is starting to come down to, is the good old boys club versus let's be patriots about stuff and let's just do right. Let's get along. And they don't care. That's why I said earlier, this is going to be a repeat of 2014 where the elected officials did not learn their lesson, and they're going to be starting the election cycle off on a very bad note. So, but yeah, that's about all I can really say about this, and hopefully things turn out for the best over the next, got 36 hours. So.
Well, I don't know that I have much hope because I still haven't read the whole email that came from him here, but he literally says things that until a court rules an order is invalid, we're obligated to follow its mandates. And he says, I can't believe that as a licensed attorney, you would actually counsel anybody to the contrary. Shame on you. Shame on you for saying we're going to follow the Constitution. Shame on you as a person who took an oath to uphold the Constitution and not every unconstitutional mandate that the government does, that you're saying we need to follow the Constitution instead of any kind of unconstitutional mandate. I'm just, and the sad thing here is he claims that a majority of the membership formally requested a special meeting for the purpose of electing their officers. That's not a thing. You can't
No.
request a special meeting for something that's already been scheduled as a regular meeting.
Well, yeah, I mean, not only is it mandatory, not only is that particular meeting mandatory within our bylaws, just like how we started, this conversation, that meeting that's the third Thursday after the November convention. So it just happens to fall on December 3 for this year. And so if you're going to request a special meeting, now I don't know what Michigan compiled laws will stipulate as to what special means, but my opinion, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a special meeting is something that's held outside the normal realm of a routine schedule meeting. So like our regular meetings are the fourth Thursday of the month. So a special meeting will probably be like a third Thursday or a second Tuesday or something like that. But also I think the definition of a special is the agenda is to be mostly based on something you normally don't do. And so an example would be on January 9 of this year, I held a special meeting for the sole purpose of us to update and approve new bylaws. That was the only thing we had on the agenda. And so for me, it's like, if you're going to ask to elect officers, that's already in the bylaws. And so I think they're trying to get to the point of, instead of in person, we want to do a Zoom. Well, as you know from reading our bylaws, that provision, Article 10, Section 2, if I remember correctly, it doesn't dictate whether you have an in-person or a Zoom meeting at all. It just basically calls for special business. And yeah.
Your bylaws are actually very clear. The Ottawa GOP bylaws, I don't have them printed here, but I'm going to go off of memory and say that under the section Article 10 of meetings, it talks about that the chair is the one that decides. The chair is the one that instructs. The chair is the one that calls for. The chair is the one that what is the other word? There's 4 words all within a very short span of space there that says that the chair is the one that decides basically the manner and timing and location of the meetings. And so when you call or how you call for a meeting, that's how it's going to take place. And so for them to go around you, it's not according to their bylaws. And quite frankly, the letter he's referring to, I guess I should have included that, because it's as though this guy literally did not read a single thing that I wrote. What they did was this letter that was, comprised of people that just had their names typewritten. You have no way of knowing if they actually participated in that or not. But at any rate, they are saying that they want to have the meeting by Zoom. That's it. They don't ask for a special meeting. There's no call for a special meeting. I'm pretty sure, without having it in front of me, I'm 98% positive the word special is nowhere in that email or that letter that he sent out. So the interesting thing is that he's then referring to that, and he and one other individual over and over have been referring to the fact that a majority of the membership requested a special meeting, and because you didn't comply, then they went ahead and scheduled it. There was never even a request for a special meeting, let alone would it have been appropriate, because what they're trying to do, just because they're calling it a special meeting, like you said, it doesn't make it a special meeting just because they're calling it a special meeting. It's the regularly scheduled meeting, and they're trying to be the ones that are controlling the manner in which it's run, and that's not their role. That is your role. And quite frankly, it needs to be done in accordance with the Constitution. So, it's just, we're the party of the Constitution, right? The Republican Party, last I checked, we're supposedly the ones that are so, it's just so important to us as Republicans that we want to make sure the Constitution is upheld, and we don't have people coming in from foreign countries that are trying to ruin it or undermine it, or from the Democrats, or, our constitutional provisions are, is something that has come up over and over again as we fight in this election for the true results to be revealed, as we're investigating and urging different governmental agencies to investigate the fraud from the election in all kinds of different capacities. But yet when it serves certain officials, and it's not like this is the only person in any kind of body or capacity who's acting in this manner, unfortunately. But it's like, well, no, I'm just going to say that doesn't apply. And then you just have to believe me that it doesn't apply. And if you don't believe me, then it doesn't matter that I don't have any ounce of proof. I can't actually cite anything. You just have to believe me and I'm right. And that's just the way it is. I mean, that's literally the way this reads. And it's disgusting. I mean, I am disgusted that an adult human being would be like this, let alone someone who's supposedly Christian, let alone someone who's supposedly a Republican. I mean, I'm dumbfounded. But, just as one note that I didn't quite share with people yet, for those who still might be questioning, is can a political party, local or state or whatnot, can it ever serve itself in a governmental capacity? Well, let me put it this way. Governmental party is actually a key element of eligibility for whether you can serve in a public office, a statewide public office, in multiple sections of our state constitution. Off the top of my head, we have the Board of Canvassers. We have the Civil Rights Commission. We have the State Transportation Commission. We have the not civil rights, but Civil Service Commission. We have the Redistricting Commission. Just off the top of my head, what did I name? Like 5 or 6 just now? Each of those positions, it says right in the language of our state constitution that if you want to serve on that commission, you are ineligible to do so. For example, if, let's see, the Board of State Canvassers, I think the wording is something like, at no point in time can you have a member, essentially you can't have a majority of any political party running that board, right? So you can have 2 and 2, but you can't have 3 and 1. And so, you have the same thing with the Redistricting Commission. You literally cannot serve on that commission if you have recently or are serving in a political office. If you have run as a partisan office, partisan candidate for state rep or county clerk or whatever. So, why it just goes, to something that's interesting, that in our state constitution, we recognize that the political parties are inherently intertwined with the functions of government in and of themselves. If we were to say political party has nothing to do with government, absolutely nothing. It's just free voluntary associations of people that are out there in the world, that have nothing to do here with, government. And, you can be a member, you don't have to be a member. It has nothing to do with the functions of government. It's just a private entity that gets to do whatever it wants. And, whether it's Catholic Charities or Big Brothers Big Sisters or the Michigan Republican Party or whatever, it's all just one big private, entity. And it's basically free from government regulation in this sense of the discussion. Except you have to go through the Republican Party. As a Republican, you have to go through the Republican Party to be able to have a say in who the candidate is going to be for Secretary of State and State Board of Education and Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor and, Wayne State University and University of Michigan and Michigan State University, right? You have to go through the Republican Party to be able to have a say. That's taking place of a primary election that's open to the general public. And you are as a Republican precinct delegate, you're on the general or the primary ballot that's available for any registered voter in Michigan to vote for. The only requirement is that it's primary day. You have to pick one or the other. If you bubble in some of the candidates as, that are Democrats, and then you bubble in others that are Republicans, your ballot essentially cancels out. Other than that, as long as you are a registered voter, you are open to be able to vote on those. I just can't get my mind around how someone can be so blatantly blind and oblivious to some of those things. So I don't know.
Well, it is what he does. There's some stuff that goes on in his personal life, so I can kind of see where he's coming from the emotional fear aspect. As you know, within the Republican Party, there's some people that just kind of buy into stuff and they don't think things through. Democrats can be just as guilty of that. So for me, it's like there's a hidden agenda behind it, as you may know with some other stuff, and he has no problem putting himself in the front lines. So that's how I've been seeing him and some of this other stuff that's going on. And, it is what it is. And I want to continue praying. I know there's some people willing to, stand behind me still, and hopefully things do turn out well. So.
What are your thoughts about having the news there? I just saw a text message from a mutual friend. She's wondering about if the news should be involved to help expose what's going on so people can see it before it's too late. They could see it essentially in real time.
Well, I think the media is definitely welcome to watch the election process if they so choose to. Also, with everything being COVID, it might be something worth looking into. I mean, at the end of the day, outside of the constitutional laws that they may be breaking, or even outside the difference of opinions on how these orders are placed, they're not following the bylaws. They're not even following Robert's rules. And you're breaking those two things. And not only that, but you're forcing a meeting just because. And you're not only forcing a meeting, but there's also evidence that, like I said earlier, I got evidence that they were fixing the election on my behalf to have a certain position later down the road that I have no desire of wanting. Obviously, I never considered the option, never took it. My heart and desire is right here in Ottawa. And so not only are they fixing the election, but they're just trying to regain control so things are run the way they want it run. And that needs to be exposed, because we can't have a select few trying to control the masses. And that's exactly what's going on here in Ottawa County, the Republican Party. So if the news happens to show up, the news happens to show up. And honestly, they have the right to be wherever they want, reporting on whatever they want. So that's the way I look at it.
Well, I like that. It's a healthy attitude to have. In general, I would agree. I assume you mean that they can't, necessarily go in your house and, film you while you're watching TV in your living room. But aside from something like that,
there are some privacy laws. So.
Right. But it's something that's open to the public. It's something like that. And, I didn't mention it in my letter, but I'm glad that you commented on it earlier, and I didn't get to grab onto it at the time because you moved on to another point. But, when you mentioned the public comment time, I mean, the fact that the agendas have, traditionally, I've never been to a GOP meeting in any county in the state of Michigan where it didn't have public comment time listed. And like you said, why would you have public comment time if the public's not going to be there? So, quite frankly, why would you have public comment time if you're the Michigan GOP if you don't think the public has a right to do that? Because do you want to have to listen to, anybody who wants to get up and talk about it? If it were a board meeting on, a true, nonprofit or whatnot, Salvation Army or whatever, would they just allow anybody off the street to come in and have 2 minutes of comment time?
Yeah, right.
So at any rate, I think that I haven't seen all the comments here. There's quite a few, but it looks like people are really appreciating the discussion tonight, appreciating the concept of knowing that there's people out there that are fighting for the Constitution. I'm sorry, I'm just dumbfounded at some of the comments that he said. I'm not a member of the part. Like, what would make me a member? From his perspective, can you help me understand? Because I certainly don't want to ask him. I can't handle any more of that kind of logic. But
I think where he may be coming from is you're not a member of the executive committee. And that may be where he's coming from. Robert's rules basically states that an executive committee is basically a smaller body within a bigger body. And so when you break up the Republican Party, really the grassroots, the precinct delegates are the foundation. Now, we do have volunteers that are not precinct delegates, and that's fine. But the grassroots that we always go to, that we can count on to make it happen, and really has the authority to make it happen. What I mean by that is the responsibility of going to conventions, and you've spoke a lot on conventions. That empowers them. So that's the Republican Party at its very root, the grassroots, the precinct delegates. And then it kind of goes up from there, executive committee, the org committee. And of course, the executive committee is a combination between citizens and the elected officials, which are statutory. So I think that's where you may be coming from, is that you're not an executive committee member, therefore you got no fight, no dog in the fight, is what they say. And you don't have a vote and blah, blah, blah. And, so there is a little truth to that. But at the same time, you are a member of the Republican Party by being a precinct delegate. I mean, by being a Republican candidate for Georgetown trustee, that right there would make you a Republican. So
you'd think. I mean, not just a candidate. I won, and because it's a township office, I'm already serving. I mean, I'm already sworn in and serving. So, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I appreciate that you tried to get me, his perspective there, because, I still, somewhere buried in here, I still have the letters that came that said, here's the call to convention. And, so I was invited just the same as, the others. So it's just interesting that he would try that tactic and to even bring it up that way. But yeah, like it just because I chose not to serve on that committee somehow means that I don't have any stake in the outcome. It's disgusting. I mean, it's just so.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. If 2014 repeats itself, there's going to be a lot of people like yourself that are aware of the situation, and you just may not consider contributing that much. You may go out and vote. You might go to the summer picnic because there's nothing else to do. But, what incentive is it for volunteers and precinct delegates to get involved with the party if a select few are going to just willy-nilly do what they want, regardless of the personnel, and not even listen and consider what other precinct delegates are talking about? Like, I could go on for the next 5-10 minutes on my resume, and yet here, there, it doesn't matter to them. I'm just another thing that, person they can just flick off and just turn their back on and walk away. And that's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate, I don't know you that well. I mean, for those who maybe think that you and I go way back or something, I think we met initially maybe 2 years ago when I moved into town, and I think there were a couple different events. One was the Hudsonville Community Expo, I think, where you were there. And
Yep, that was my first memory of you.
okay.
Because you were, because I remember you wanted to get elevated as a precinct delegate, and it never happened. Of course, Janessa was the chair at the time. I was the vice chair. And, and she never said anything about you. Nobody said anything about you. So when it's April, here you're talking at the expo. You just moved from Ionia, I believe is where you came from. And it's like,
County.
Well, yeah. Okay. So it's like, I got to keep her in my mind because there's nothing I can do regarding her precinct delegate desire until August of 2020. And so I just kept you in mind, made a mental note, wrote things down. And, I believe I reached out to you too, just to let you know about the deadline. Okay.
You can fill vacancies though. You can fill vacancies. You can do that.
Right. Yeah.
But that's okay, because I didn't miss out, especially hanging out with some of the crowd that I'm now getting to learn about. I'm glad I wasn't tortured for the last few years in that regard. But yeah, I actually had commented back in July of 2018 when I met her at the barbecue that I was interested in being a precinct delegate, and she knew that there were vacancies. And so, or maybe I had looked it up because I knew that the primary was coming up. And yeah. And then, yeah, you're right. It was April. So it would have been, I can't do the math right now, like 7 months later. And she hadn't done anything yet. So it's just one of those things. It's not the only county that does that. There's a lot of counties out there. I've experienced them and seen them myself. I've heard of other people's stories as well, but it's sad when it's like that. And what I can say though is, when I have reached out to you, I do appreciate that you have been one to, try to find an answer if you don't think you have the answer, to do follow-up, to, essentially seek the truth and seek to do the right thing. I have not, you kind of mentioned the good old boy network thing. Man, have I experienced that a lot in my life, especially being an attorney, especially a female blonde attorney, and graduating from law school at such a young age. That's the good old boy network is something I know quite well. And I have never felt like you were part of that. Not that I've even ever seen you interact with any of I couldn't tell you who, the outgoing executive board is, or, the executive committee, I should say. But I just, in how you interacted with me, I've never felt that you had that kind of exclusionary type of posture. And I appreciate that. And, so to those of, we have a lot of questions. I haven't caught, all of them. We have some people that are asking how to find out about their county GOP meetings. I don't know the answer to that, quite frankly. But I could tell you guys, if you run as precinct delegate, those forms are available online, and you can ask your county clerk, and you can, just go to the Secretary of State's website. They have a lot of different forms available. But if you run as a precinct delegate, and you, even just being a candidate, but especially if you win, then they will have to send you notices about when the meeting is and where the meeting is. And you'll be able to find out that way, if by no other reason. But so I guess I would ask each of you to consider, might it be an uphill battle for you to really get in and start to participate and have a say? Yeah, if you're going to have people that like this that you're dealing with, like this Ken and some of these other individuals, they couldn't care less about the law. They couldn't care less about the Constitution. They just think they know everything and they want to be controlling. So, it's going to be an unfortunate, side effect but I think it's worth it. If you're willing to get involved and make a difference, that is honestly one of the most, low risk positions, if you will. It's grassroots. You don't have, you're not laying it all out on the line. And it's a way that people can really stand up and start to, come together as patriots and make a change. So I appreciate you, David, talking about this and giving your perspective as a chair. Dare I say, one of the only true grassroots chairs that I've ever encountered. And certainly I hope, I certainly do hope that you win on Thursday. So I guess it'll be interesting to see if there's even a quorum, but I think it's something, who knows, maybe I'll show up and I'll YouTube live it to see, for all these friends of mine to see what's going on and how it works, and to see, if you do in fact have a quorum, and for you to win, because if those who don't care about the Constitution are the ones that are hiding, at home behind their computers, they won't be there to vote. So, maybe it'll be easier than you think to be reelected. So I do like how somebody else responded after him and reminded him that he did not request a special meeting. He certainly was not speaking on the majority, behalf of the majority of the members, and basically said something about, well, I guess if you choose not to show up on Thursday, then don't. But otherwise, see you there in person. So I like that. So I hope you find that encouraging, and that I think your hard work is going to pay off. So
well, thank you. I appreciate that. And if you see me looking this way, it's because I'm seeing a drop on my computer, and it's emails coming in, and I've been getting texts like, hey, read your email, you gotta call so-and-so. And it's like, all week, since last Saturday, I'm like, I really wanted to sit down with a couple people and just talk, because I knew every day we got closer to the election, it's going to get more heated, and there's going to be more fights, and there's going to be more arguing. And it's like, not only are we Republicans and adults, but we live in an area where we like to say we're Christians. And unfortunately, we're not acting like Christians, we're not acting like Republicans, and we're not acting like adults. And
right.
The one thing that I've been most prideful of my chairmanship has been the unity of the party. We've had different factions, and those factions, you could say they still exist, but they've come to the table. Like you said, they were welcomed, they participated, and they blend right in with the party. Our conventions, let's see, I did 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 conventions were unmistakably the most harmonious conventions that we've had. There's always been fights, divisions, but everything was voted by voice. It was unanimous. It flowed. I'm not going to say I had record timing when things getting done. As you mentioned, we've been having late starts regarding the technical difficulties. But at the end of the day, when you look at all the unity that's been brought, and now you got this one person and a couple other elected officials possibly, and they're just going to hammer down. It's like, what are you guys thinking? So yeah, I got people that are like, they're right behind me. They're giving me that slap on the back and encouraging me to go. So, and I thank you for all your kind words too.
All right. Well, don't stay up too late making all those phone calls and return emails. But I'm sure I will be talking with you soon. And either way, we know that God's got this. But hopefully we are doing his will by trying to expose the truth and educating our fellow citizens on what the Constitution says and what the law says, and really what the right thing to do is. And, for as many times as I've heard, just as I heard last night at my township board meeting, where a certain unnamed individual said something to the effect of, well, I disagree with what you're saying about these, meetings being illegal or unconstitutional. They're happening all over the place. And, if what we're doing is wrong by, the meetings before I was on the board, if what we're doing is wrong by having these Zoom meetings, then all these other municipalities and whatnot are also violating the law. And to that, I'm like, duh, yeah. And
Right.
it's funny because I forget what the passage is, but I think it's, well, at any rate, we're not supposed to conform any longer to the patterns of this world.
Mhm.
That's what God's word tells us. So I am just dumbfounded at the amount of Christians that will say, but everybody else is doing it, so it's okay. No, that would be the pattern of this world. And we're not supposed to just live by the pattern of this world. We're supposed to stand out and be the light, and to shine brightly in all the dark and ugly that's happening. So hopefully we've been able to do that here tonight. And I appreciate you having me on. And there are some questions. I'm going to real quick, Mike, is there anything I need to address after? Are there any questions that David would have to answer, or can I? Maybe these ones.
Oh boy.
So how do you find your local GOP meeting? Do you know the answer off the top of your head?
So if they're referring to this upcoming meeting, I could probably send you the Zoom link, and then you can pass it on to your followers.
The Zoom link?
Well, that's what it is right now. I mean, as far as
no, it's not.
If you wanted to crash that one, but as far as the real meeting that we're supposed to have, that I'm still planning on having, is at Lighthouse Baptist Church. I believe the address is 501 East 24th Street, Holland, Michigan 49424, and that should. Well, it should be on the website. Someone may have changed it. I haven't been on it yet. That's where it's supposed to be at 7:00 this Thursday. So
you know what? You can also get me, if you want to get me a little blurb, just something that I can post where I'm not having to think a ton about it. I can send it off to my web team and my social media people, and we'll blast it all over on our reach. That's where the Ottawa GOP meeting will be on Thursday. But in general, for people because we have people that are here, but we also have people that are all over the state. Do you know where somebody, if they're, in Roscommon or whatever, do you know if there's an easy way for people to look up where their local GOP meetings would be?
My best bet for starters would be go to their website, and it should tell you when their meetings are. If you can't find anything, then look up the phone number, give them a call.
Okay. And then the last question here, I think I know the answer, but I could let you take this one too. How do you get on the executive committee for a local GOP?
I'm going to assume that all counties are the same, because state party kind of dictates a few things. So for Ottawa, we had a county convention a few weeks ago. If you're a duly elected precinct delegate, you have the right to vote at the convention. Now, I don't know about all the bylaws in the other counties, but here in Ottawa, the only requirement for you is to be a resident of Ottawa County. You don't actually have to be a precinct delegate. You can be just your typical person that wants to get involved, and you go to the convention, and you basically, here in Ottawa, we do challenges. So the beginning of the convention, we present a slate, and that slate basically says, okay, these are the people that wanted to be on it, and these are the people that we believe would best serve the party because of their skills, their gifts, their knowledge, their experience. And and what I said at this past county convention is, if you believe that the slate committee made an honest mistake and you believe you should be on there because you can bring more to the table, feel free to make that challenge and let the delegates make the decision for yourself. So I do have to try to be careful a little bit when I talk about the slate committee because it can be a sticky subject with some people. But here in Ottawa, basically, if you just show up at the county convention, after the general election of each even year, you have the opportunity to get on. That's the normal way of getting on. If between the 2 years somebody was to resign and move on, it creates an open spot, and the executive committee can either choose to fill it or leave it vacant. If they choose to fill it, they have to at least give a 30-day notice, and then so after 30 days, then they can have an election, and it'll be just the executive committee members only that would vote to fill that spot. So
All
I
right.
hope that
Well,
wasn't too confusing.
No, I mean, that was a much more thorough explanation. I was just going to say, you get a letter like I did and you show up, and then if you, if you want to be on there. So, no, that was pretty informative. And I would hope that it would be mostly the same. We do have some frowny faces. I think that's what that is, from people like Kelly, in talking about the slates. I'm going to be honest. I too am not a fan of slates. I think it's one more layer in between people and the opportunity to vote. But, I understand it's, in bigger counties, I want to say, well, I was told at last night's township meeting that Ottawa County, nope, that is actually our township. Well, our township is the 7th largest township in the entire state, is what was mentioned last night. So, and our township being within Ottawa County, I can only imagine that has direct implications then on the kind of population that we're seeing here. And so I know if our township has something, I think they said roughly like 52,000 people in our township, and we're just a slice of Ottawa County, that there's quite a few people in Ottawa County. So my understanding is doing a slate is essentially meant to make it more manageable when you potentially have a lot of people that you're dealing with, and you're not going to, when you have bigger positions and, more state rep districts per, county or whatever the situation is. So you have more seats to fill, then it's just trying to make it manageable. So I get that it's a balancing act, but hence the I don't know, frowny face or whatever we want to call that. So
it's not a popular subject. The last couple of years we've talked about it and we've made some changes. I believe our slate committee is better, but just because I'm saying it's better doesn't mean that it can't get better and continue to improve. And there's always going to be some people that are going to be against it altogether, and that's fine. I'll be more than happy to listen to your ideas. And by doing that, that's how we've been making things better. And I think that's how we've been able to bring more unity to the party. But as you were saying, it really does help expedite things and create some order. And at the end of the day, we still allow challenges. So anybody that's originally on the slate, in fact, I always like to say this, just because this is a slate of people starting at the convention, you guys have the ability to turn it upside down and get rid of all of them if you want to. I mean, just because you're not on or just because you're on it doesn't guarantee anything. It's at the end of the day, it's still the will of the people. It may be an extra step. It may be something you don't like, but at the end of the day, it's still the will of the people. So as unpopular as it is.
I have to smirk when you say something about walking in and turning something upside down, because that's, I think that's my middle name. Would you say, Mike? You should have seen the look on my husband's face. So
he's probably like, oh yeah.
Yep.
So,
well, I mean, last night's meeting was, not that long ago. In fact, we were just getting home about 24 hours ago because we were there for quite a long time. So, all right. Well, I see there's, there are some questions, but I don't have answers to all the questions. And, I will do my best to do some, videos in the next few days to try to get some more answers. I wish I had a Staples easy button for all those questions that are like, hey, how do we get those unconstitutional, people out of office? And it should be as easy as going and doing a citizen's arrest. But, there's obviously a lot of other things that come into play. So at any rate, I I appreciate you, David. I appreciate all of you who have joined in on the discussion, as well as just watching, silently per se. Hopefully we've been able to enlighten people and bring some new information. And I look forward to, regardless of the outcome on Thursday, let's try to very soon thereafter do a follow-up video and just kind of explain the process, what happened, what didn't happen, what worked, what didn't work, that kind of thing. And just to give people a little heads up on how it all plays out. So that be okay with you?
That's fair. Yep. I appreciate that.
Okay, awesome. Well, have a wonderful night, and I'll see you all pretty soon.
All right. Thanks.